The war had lasted for 300 years. 3 centuries of blood and fire. 300 cycles of the twin moons, watching the Galactic Coalition suffer defeat after defeat against the Varric Empire. Commander Lyra Ley of the Elven Scout Division stood at the edge of the observation deck, her silver eyes scanning the endless darkness of space. Behind her, the holographic display showed the same terrible news it had shown for decades. Another colony fallen. Another fleet destroyed. Another million souls lost to the enemy. The Vorok were unlike anything the Coalition had ever faced. They were massive creatures, standing 12 feet tall with armored skin that could resist plasma fire. Their ships were built like fortresses. Their weapons could crack planets, and their soldiers knew no fear. Every species in the Coalition had tried to find a weakness. The elves with their ancient wisdom. The dwarven engineers with their incredible machines. The Celestials with their psychic powers. All had failed. Lyra Ley turned away from the window and walked toward the briefing room. Her team of 6 elite scouts waited for her there. They were the best of the best, chosen from thousands of candidates across the Elven homeworlds. Their mission was simple but deadly. They were going to infiltrate a Varric supply station and gather intelligence. Any intelligence. The Coalition was desperate now. The briefing room was quiet when she entered. Her scouts stood at attention, their faces showing the same exhaustion she felt in her own bones. Dalaran, her second-in-command, nodded at her. His eyes carried the weight of too many lost friends. Beside him stood the twins, Ariz and Mira, both gifted with the ability to move without sound. Then there was Keldris, the technology expert, and finally Bran, the youngest of them all. Lyra Ley activated the holographic map. A small space station appeared, floating in the void near the Varric border. It was not heavily guarded because the Varric did not believe anyone would be foolish enough to attack them this deep in their territory. That arrogance would be their downfall, Lyra Ley hoped. The journey took 14 days. Their ship, a small stealth vessel called the Shadow Whisper, slipped through enemy space like a ghost. They avoided patrols and hid in asteroid fields when necessary. On the 15th day, they reached their target. The station hung in space like a metal spider, its arms reaching out in all directions. Supply ships came and went, carrying weapons and food for the endless war machine. They docked in a blind spot, a small section of the station that the sensors could not reach. Keldris had found this weakness in stolen data files. The team moved in silence, their training making them invisible even to Vorok eyes. The station's corridors were dark and cold. The Varric preferred low temperatures and dim lighting. It made the elves uncomfortable, but they pushed forward. The first hour passed without incident. They mapped the station's layout and identified key targets. Weapons storage, communication arrays, command centers. All useful information, but nothing that would turn the tide of war. Lyra Ley was beginning to feel the familiar weight of disappointment when Bran signaled for attention. He had found something strange. A section of the station that did not appear on any map. A hidden door behind a storage room. The team gathered around as Keldris worked to bypass the lock. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a long corridor leading downward. The air here was different, warmer, cleaner. They descended carefully, weapons ready. The corridor ended at another door, this one heavily reinforced. Through a small window, Lyra Ley saw something that made her heart stop. Prisoners. But not elves or dwarves or any species she recognized from the Coalition. These creatures were different. Tall but not as tall as Vork. Their skin came in various shades, from pale pink to deep brown. They had no pointed ears, no scales, no obvious natural weapons. They looked soft, fragile. Keldris accessed the station's database through a nearby terminal. His face went pale as he read the information. These creatures were called humans. They came from a distant world called Earth on the far edge of the galaxy. The Varric had discovered them 50 years ago and had expected an easy conquest. They were wrong. The files told an incredible story. The humans had no psychic powers. Their technology was primitive compared to the Coalition. They had no natural armor, no venomous claws, no ability to survive in vacuum. By all measurements, they should have been easy prey. But they were not. The Vorak invasion of Earth had been a disaster. The humans fought with a ferocity the Empire had never seen. They used tactics that seemed insane. They would sacrifice their own ships to destroy enemy vessels. They built weapons in underground factories while cities burned above them. They refused to surrender even when all hope was lost. The first invasion force was destroyed completely. The second fared no better. Lirelei read the reports with growing amazement. The humans had something the Vorak called the madness. It was their ability to ignore fear, to fight through wounds that would kill any other species, to keep going when logic said they should stop. The Vorak scientists had been studying captured humans for decades, trying to understand this trait. They found that humans produce certain chemicals in their brains during times of danger: adrenaline, cortisol. These chemicals turned ordinary humans into temporary monsters. But that was not all. The files also spoke of human creativity, their ability to adapt and improvise. When their ships were outgunned, they invented new ships. When their weapons failed, they made better ones. They learned from every defeat and came back stronger. One human soldier, captured and interrogated, had told the Vorak something that disturbed them deeply. Humans were not afraid of death. They were afraid of losing, and they would do anything to win. The prisoners in the cells were not soldiers. They were engineers, scientists, doctors. The Vorak had captured them to steal their knowledge. Each human had been implanted with a device that prevented escape. But even here, locked away and alone, they showed no sign of breaking. Their eyes were sharp, alert, waiting for an opportunity. Lirelei made a decision that would change everything. She ordered her team to free the prisoners. Thalarin questioned her, pointing out that this was not their mission, that taking prisoners would slow them down, that the Vorak would hunt them across the galaxy. Lirelei understood all of this. She did not care. Something in her gut told her these humans were important, that they were the key to ending the war. Keldris disabled the security systems. The cell doors opened one by one. There were 47 humans in total, men and women of various ages. They looked at the elves with suspicion at first, but when they realized they were being rescued, something changed in their faces. Hope. A hope that had survived 50 years of captivity. One human stepped forward. He was older than the others, with gray hair and scars on his face. His name was Marcus Chen, and he had been a general before his capture. He spoke in a language the elves did not understand, but Keldris quickly programmed a translator. Marcus thanked them for the rescue. Then he asked a simple question. Did the elves want to win the war? The escape from the station was chaos. Alarms screamed. Vorak soldiers filled the corridors. But the humans moved with purpose. They had clearly been planning something during their years of captivity. They knew the station's layout better than the elves did. They led the way through maintenance tunnels and forgotten passages. When they encountered enemy soldiers, the humans fought with their bare hands. They were not graceful like elves. They were brutal, efficient, terrifying. One human woman, a scientist named Sarah, picked up a fallen Vorak weapon and fired it without hesitation. She had never used such a weapon before, but she figured it out in seconds. Another human, a young man barely out of childhood, tackled a Vorak soldier twice his size and brought him down through sheer willpower. The elves watched in amazement. These soft creatures with no natural weapons were fighting like demons. They reached the Shadow Whisper and launched into space. Vorak ships pursued them, but Keldris had prepared for this. He activated the stealth systems and dove into a nearby asteroid field. For 3 days they hid, wounded and exhausted, while enemy patrols searched for them. During this time, Marcus and Lirelei talked. Marcus explained what the humans could offer the coalition. Not just soldiers, though Earth had billions of people willing to fight. Not just technology, though human engineers had developed weapons specifically designed to hurt the Vorik. No, what humans offered was something more valuable. They offered their way of thinking. The coalition species were ancient. They had fought wars for thousands of years using the same strategies. They followed rules of engagement that limited their options. They accepted certain defeats as inevitable. Humans did not think this way. To humans, every problem had a solution. Every enemy had a weakness. Every battle could be won if you were willing to pay the price. Marcus told Lirelei about something humans called total war. The concept horrified her at first. It meant targeting enemy supply lines, factories, and civilian infrastructure. It meant using every resource available, holding nothing back. It meant accepting terrible casualties to achieve victory. The elves considered such tactics barbaric. But as Marcus spoke, Lirelei began to understand. The coalition had been fighting a polite war against an enemy that showed no mercy. They had been losing because they refused to become what the enemy was. The journey back to coalition space took 3 weeks. During that time, the humans and elves formed a bond. They shared stories and meals. They learned each other's languages. The humans taught the elves their fighting techniques, their dirty tricks, their willingness to break rules. The elves shared their knowledge of the galaxy, its politics, its secrets. By the time they reached the coalition capital, they were not just allies. They were friends. Lirelei presented her report to the coalition council. The leaders of every species listened in silence as she described what she had found. Many were skeptical. These humans sounded too good to be true. But Marcus stepped forward and addressed the council directly. He did not plead or beg. He made them an offer. Give Earth the coordinates of Vorik supply lines. Give them ships and weapons. Give them a chance. The humans would do what no other species had done in 300 years. They would take the war to the enemy. They would burn Vorik worlds and destroy Vorik fleets. They would show the galaxy that the Empire could bleed. The council debated for 7 days. In the end, desperation won over doubt. They had nothing left to lose. A message was sent to Earth, the first official contact between humanity and the coalition. The response came within hours. Earth was ready. Earth had been preparing for this moment for 50 years. Lirelei stood on the observation deck again, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, human fleets were gathering. Somewhere out there, the Vorik Empire was about to face an enemy unlike any they had encountered before. The war was not over yet. But for the first time in 300 years, victory seemed possible. She smiled as she watched the darkness. The enemy's weakness had been found. Not in their armor or their weapons or their ships. Their weakness was their arrogance. Their certainty that they could not be beaten. They had never faced humans before. They did not know what was coming. But soon, very soon, they would learn.